thank you all for being here today. If you're not wearing a mask, please do so. It looks like everyone is. We appreciate that. We are in a substantial risk for COVID in this county now. I'm pleased to be joined today by Lee Jones and Penny Githens from the Board of Commissioners. And I will note that Rita Barrow, the Van Buren Township trustee, is also in attendance. Thank you. Our goal is to provide information for you on the impact of Bloomington's annexation plan, not just for Monroe County, but for Monroe County residents who are targeted for annexation. So joining us today are representatives from Baker Tilly, the consultants we hired to provide an assessment on annexation. And we have two people joining by Zoom, Jeff Cockrell from Monroe County Legal and Dustin Dillard, Chief of Monroe County Fire Protection District. And this is the first in a series of public meetings that will be held, public information sessions. And these have been provided to you by Monroe County government. I want to give a nod to our technical services department that have set everything up for us today. A huge thank you for that. We are hybrid via Zoom, so we do have folks joining us via Zoom. Our next public information meeting, for those of you on Zoom, the next one is Sunday, August 1st at the Monroe County Fairgrounds at 2 p.m. That is an in-person only event. Please wear your mask. And Monday, August 2nd at the Kennedy Drive Fire Station. That is going to be a hybrid meeting and you can join via Zoom. It will be pretty much the same program as we have today at the next two meetings. But if you're just catching part of this today on CATS or something like that, and you want to attend another of our meetings, please do so. And again, all persons attending either of those public meetings in person should be wearing masks. And what we're going to do is we're going to have these three presentations, and at the end of each, we will have a opportunity to ask questions of the presenters. And then at the end of the session, you have another opportunity to ask questions as well. So some things may bubble up for you as we proceed. And we'll begin with Lee Jones to introduce Baker Tilly.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We turned to Baker Tilly to do an annexation financial analysis for us. The city had done one, but it always seems like a good idea to get a second opinion. And there were several assumptions and decisions that were made for the city analysis that we were somewhat unsure about. So it turned out that Baker Tilly clarified these subjects for us quite a bit. So we want to make sure that all of the public has a chance to hear their presentation, understand what it is that they have to say, and ask questions of them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dean Rogers and Paige Sansone, who will tell us a lot more about their report.
Good evening. Thank you for that introduction. I want to give a little bit of background on Paige and I, just to kind of set the stage a little bit. Paige and I are both registered municipal advisors, work with a lot of municipal entities around the state of Indiana and nationally. Paige focuses a lot on budget work. I focus a lot on utility work, actually, but have a little niche specialty working with annexation. So I'm often on the other side of the table. I'm working with cities and towns doing annexation work. So it's a little bit strange for me to be on this side of the table. So having said that, you know, we're not here to disparage the city of Bloomington, disparage annexation, or disparage their consultants. We're just here to get information into your hands and, you know, help answer any questions that you may have. You know, there's going to be instances of things that we talk about where we found, you know, a lot of things in the fiscal plan that are generally right, or we came up with conclusions that are very similar. And there's going to be instances where we came to conclusions that are a little bit different, and we'll talk about those things. So I want to start then by mentioning that The information that's going to be discussed tonight, if you haven't already grabbed one, there's hard copies on the end of a table here by the entrance that you're welcome to grab. Also, on the screens is the county's website, and on the front page under recent news, you can find links to the information that we're going to be discussing tonight. So what we're going to have pulled up on the screens is just a PDF version of the hard copy, but I want you to know that the second link there, the Baker Tilly Tax Impact Calculator, is a live electronic Excel document that you can use to calculate your individual tax bills. So the hard copy is just an example, and we'll go through that example and how to use it, but that's the link that you would use for your own personal use. Thank you. So what's on the screen now is an example and a fixed hard copy of the electronic version that you'll find on the county's website. Wanted to put this together for you for various reasons. You'll see, if you've already analyzed the fiscal plan that's on the city's website, that they calculate tax impact by parcel. So many of you have probably already gone there to look up your individual tax impacts. We've provided the same sort of calculation in a different format, but there are some differences. We have updated the information to 2020 net assessed values for taxes payable in 2021. So that's kind of a year ahead of the information that's in the fiscal plan. That includes your 19 net assessed values for taxes that, with 20 tax rates and some assumed future tax rates. Also, this calculator is based on facts that we know today. We haven't built in some growth assumptions that are included in the fiscal plan for various reasons. We just wanted a straight apples to apples comparison of the facts that we know today. This calculator will calculate your tax bill in your current taxing district, which is, just an unincorporated township, compared to the tax rate if you were to in Bloomington at their existing 2021 tax rates, or the tax rates that in many cases there will be a new taxing district form that doesn't exist, that includes the city's corporate tax rate. So let's take a look at what you have on the screen in front of you. There's 4 steps at the top of this that you'll see when you click on the live version of this through the county's website. First, you're going to click a link that takes you to a place to look up your tax bill. When you do that, you can search by parcel number, you can search by your address, you can search by your name, but you should be able to find your tax bill. Once you do that, and I'll show you an example of what that tax bill looks like and where to find this information in a moment. But once you do that, you'll go to step 2, and in this box, there's going to be a drop down, and you're going to be able to select from one of 6 townships that are impacted and included in Bloomington's annexation plans. So make sure you select your proper taxing district, and we'll show you where to find that in a moment. Step 3, you're going to fill in these 4 gray boxes. So on your tax bill, you're going to look at table 1, summary of your taxes, and you're going to fill out from the 2020 paid 2021 column your amounts that are in 1A, 1B, 1C, and then also further down 4C. So yeah, you're kind of helping me here. If you have your hard copy, there's an example of a tax bill that you could kind of follow along as I'm, if you find it helpful, but we'll jump to it here in a moment. And then finally, step 4, you're going to complete these 6 gray boxes that you'll find in table 5, the deductions applicable to your property. So, if you're a homestead, if your property is your primary residence and you have a mortgage on it, generally you're going to complete these first 3 items. There may be other circumstances where you have an over 65 deduction, maybe a partial or total disability as a veteran, disabled or blind. There are some other deductions that are less common, but that you may find on your tax bill. Once you do that, it's going to spit out and show the result of your estimated tax impact from annexation, both in dollars and as a percentage increase. There are a few notes on here, which we won't get into the weeds of now. The final note does say, though, however, if you want, well, first of all, if you want to see the details behind the calculation, go to page 2 and we'll keep scrolling. And if for some reason you've input all of this information and it doesn't tie out to your current tax bill within 2 cents, you've probably input something wrong. If you go back and try again and you just can't get it to match, there's going to be contact information through the county's website as to who to reach out to. There's been a lot of testing done of this model, but you can't guarantee 100% accuracy. I think any issues are going to be few and far between. But if you do run into issues, just make sure you reach out to someone and we can dig into it for you and help straighten things out. So if you do want to see details behind the tax bill calculation, this is what you will see. It will calculate your current tax bill, and you'll look at this green box to make sure you're within 2 cents of what you've pulled up on the website. And if so, you know that you've input your data correctly. And then it will show the estimated post-annexation tax bill and highlighted green. So that first page just summarizes the difference between this calculation and this calculation. So where do you find your information to plug into this? The next few pages here are an example of what you would find by clicking on that very first link and entering your either parcel number, address, or name to pull up your tax bill. And I have a real example here. I know it's public information, but I've kind of blacked out the personal data just to not share someone's information publicly. The first page, you're going to want to proceed past, so just proceed to the next page. This just indicates how much is due in the spring and fall installments. But when you get to the second page, this is where you're going to find all of the information to plug into your tax calculator. So right here, you can see step 2, this is your taxing district. So this is going to indicate which township you are currently in that you'll find in that drop-down menu. Proceeding to step 3, and I mentioned that you find this information in table 1. So 1A, 1B, and 1C, make sure you're grabbing these 3 values from the 20 pay 21 column. And then also make sure if you have a value in 4C, if there's any value here, make sure you are inputting that as well. And then lastly, down here in table 5 is where you will find the deductions. So where you have these deductions, make sure you're entering that in step 4 of your tax bill calculator. So you may ask, you know, why did we go to the trouble to do this? And I've put together a couple of frequently asked questions here. Before we get into this, so one example is, I can recall looking up a parcel that in the fiscal plan, it says that the tax impact is $7.47. Well, when I did the calculation and update it for the 2020 net assessed value for taxes payable in 21, the tax impact is $830. So there are occasions where you could find a significant difference. And it's not that there's necessarily errors in the calculation, it's that we're using updated information. So in that particular example that I mentioned, it's because there was a transfer of ownership from 19 to 20, and it's no longer a homestead in the current year. It may be used as a rental property, and they're no longer receiving deductions. And that creates a significant change from what you see in the fiscal plan. So that's just one example. You know, I wouldn't expect there to be a ton of those where there are significant differences, but certainly that possibility exists. And that's why we wanted to provide you with this tool so that you can calculate it on your own using more recent information. So looking at the frequently asked questions, question one is, when I utilize the property tax calculator on the county's website, I get a different result from what is shown in the fiscal plan on the city's website. Why is that? So I wanted to share some examples or some answer that question with, there's many different reasons why that could be the case. So as I just explained in the example that I shared, the tax impacts in the fiscal plan are based on 2019 assessments. The parcel list really should include the most recent assessed value of the parcel. I get it, that can be difficult to keep that updated. It's time consuming to prepare a fiscal plan, especially one this large. However, in our tool, we did update it to include the 2020 net assessed values. So there is a year update in all of the data there. So then by using the 2020 net assessed values for taxes payable in 2021, we're capturing changes in ownership that may have occurred, any changes in assessed values, changes in tax rates, and other factors. And, you know, by other factors, like the example that I just mentioned, maybe it's no longer a homestead. The tax impacts included in the fiscal plan factor in assessed value growth of 12% total over 4 years, where our calculations do not factor in growth. It's not unreasonable to assume that there will be growth. In fact, it may be likely, but we just wanted to give a comparison based on what we know today. So we state that this growth is speculative and may or may not occur with or without annexation. In addition, the growth is applied improperly in the fiscal plan. If assuming growth, it should be applied to net assessed values with the applicable adjustments to deductions, but it appears to be incorrectly applied to gross assessed values, which creates inconsistencies in the net assessed value growth per parcel. So we are only comparing the impact on current tax bills based on the tax based on the tax rate today versus the tax bill as if it were incorporated into the city of Bloomington today. So in addition to that, along with that 12% growth assumption, in the fiscal plan, you'll see that they broke down the increase in tax bill between two categories. It says increase in your tax bill due to AV growth and increase in your tax bill due to annexation growth. That, in my opinion, that wasn't really calculated properly. They basically took the overall tax bill increase multiplied by 12% to get how much is applicable to AV growth. And that's not how you would apply that math. So by avoiding that whole assessed value growth assumption as part of this, it simplifies it and just kind of takes out that error that could occur and that we see occurring in the fiscal plan. Lastly, a question could be, is it possible that my tax impact from annexation could be different by the time a successful annexation would become effective in 2024 for taxes payable in 2025? So yes, it is entirely possible and likely. Over the next 4 years, it's likely that assessments and tax rates will change, many of which may be out of the control of specific individual taxing units. However, the estimated tax impacts calculated by the tool on the county's website are the best estimates based on the facts as known today. So I do encourage you, even if you've looked at your tax impacts in the fiscal plan on the city's website, get out and use this tool of the county. You may very well find similar results, but if some of your factors have changed over the past year, you may find results that are somewhat different. Would it be appropriate to pause at this point in time and see if there are questions?
Absolutely.
I'm curious. Anyone have a question? I would appreciate it if you come up here and speak into this microphone so people understand.
And then we're going to ask you to sign in later. So there's a little paper there on the.
You're an accounting firm. Did you run a consolidated run on assessed valuations and where taxes are predicted to be to see what the average tax rate change will be?
We did not. Paige will present in a little bit, and we do compare, revenue impacts for all of the overlapping taxing units. But as far as determining changes in tax rates in the future, is that your question? We have not done that.
Okay. The one thing that I'm having trouble getting my head around is that I'm in area 1B and there's a 1A, 1B, and 1C. Why are those divided like that? Wouldn't that typically be all one area?
Yeah, so my answer will kind of be speculation, not having been involved in those decision-making process for the city and not having the advantage of having a map in front of me. Sometimes areas are split out like that for contiguity purposes, to make sure that they have, and by contiguity, I mean, you have to have a certain amount of contiguity, meaning the area that you're annexing, a certain portion of that has to match up with the existing corporate boundaries of the city in order to meet the requirements of Indiana law for annexation. And that minimum is 12.5%. So occasionally you will break up areas to make sure you're meeting those contiguity requirements, or you will break up areas that, because they're not contiguous with one another. I'm not sure if that's the case here, but those are some reasons why you split up individual annexation areas like that. Sometimes it can be strategic. I mean, you may know you've got certain areas where you've got a sufficient amount of waivers to prevent a remonstrance, and you may strategically break up an annexation area for that reason. So it could be some of those reasons.
I'm sorry, did you say you were an attorney?
I am not an attorney. Nope.
Now let's say area 1C succeeds in getting the necessary percentage for remonstrance and 1B does not. Well, does that mean 1C has a possible escape from this annexation and 1B?
Correct. Yes, they would be evaluated individually.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Are there any questions from Zoom?
Let me find out.
There are none.
All right, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, so I will take over this part of the presentation. My name is Paige Sandstone, as was mentioned earlier. So in this portion of the presentation, what we did is we analyzed the impact of the overlapping taxing units. So if you're a taxpayer, you're going to be less interested in this portion of the presentation. But if you're a taxing unit, like I know Van Buren Township is here tonight, the county's here tonight, you're going to be interested in this, because what we did is we analyzed the impact of the revenues on the overlapping taxing units. So we were looking at the city's financial advisors' work, their fiscal plan, and trying to kind of analyze whether that was reasonable, if there were errors, et cetera. So I'm going to say that overall, the assumptions used with this revenue analysis were pretty reasonable. So for instance, the financial advisor used an annual increase of property tax of 3.8%. That's pretty reasonable. Local income tax, the financial advisor used a 3% annual increase. That's pretty reasonable also. However, it was not consistently done throughout the report. There was also a levy increase that was assumed for the city of Bloomington. So cities or municipalities that annex areas can get an automatic increase to their maximum levy up to 15%. For instance, if the annexation area increases their overall net assessed value by 15%, they would get a 15% increase to their maximum property tax levy. That's how much that they can generate in a given year. It's capped out unless they can get some sort of adjustment. This annexation increases the city's net assessed value by something larger than 15%. I think it's closer to maybe 20, 21%. So when we do the math, the 15% maximum in automatic increase to what that can levy in property taxes is about 5.56 million. The report from the financial advisor estimates almost an $8 million increase. So the report doesn't say that the city's going to file an annexation appeal, which would be another method of increasing, above that 15% automatic increase. But we're going to make that assumption that that's what's planned here because they are contemplating an $8 million increase in the maximum levy. So I just want to explain that. We went ahead and went along with that assumption, assuming that that's what they're planning to do. Other items within the revenue calculations, one of them that we noted has to do with cigarette tax. So cigarette tax is based on kind of a per capita formula when it gets to the taxing unit. And for the general fund, that formula is about 57 cents per capita. The financial advisor's report was using $5.70 per capita. So after going through a number of these items, we ended up restating some of these revenues based on what it should be. And what I want you to note, and again, this is, if you're not part of a taxing unit, this is probably going to be foreign information, and I apologize for that. But again, this is really focusing on the impact to the individual overlapping taxing units. But I think what you're going to find as you go down through these pages is that I've highlighted the items that were a big variance as far as what we restated compared to the city's financial advisor. And really what we found is in a lot of areas, we came up with pretty close to the same answer, really. So using their assumptions, which were pretty reasonable, we came up with the same answers in a lot of the areas. But where we found significant differences in some cases, and not all cases, but some cases, had to do with the local income tax. Okay, so local income tax is what you pay on your adjusted gross income when you pay your Indiana taxes. That is distributed out to taxing units within the county based on how much each taxing unit levies as a proportion to the total county's levy. So when a taxing unit increases their overall levy, they get a bigger share of that local income tax. And that's what's happening here in this analysis is Bloomington, if they're going to increase their overall tax levy by $8 million, they're going to get a larger share of that local income tax. And it really does impact not only the overlapping taxing units associated with this annexation, but it impacts every taxing unit within the county because again, they're all, all the levies are added up and then you just calculate what each individual taxing unit's levy is to that total levy. So as percentages change, there's a reallocation of that revenue. So we have a calculator that we use, and it's really based on the Department of Local Government Finance, how they calculate this. And so we plugged in some of these numbers to reallocate that revenue stream, that local income tax, and we did come up with some differences. So the very first one at the top is the Monroe County Taxing Unit. So that's just the county unit of government. And I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but if you just look at what I've highlighted, the local income tax item, we're coming up with a revenue reduction for Monroe County unit of 1.4 million just for the local income tax piece. The city's financial advisor came up with about almost 535,000. So you can see there's a difference there, an $866,000 difference. So if we just look, let's look grand total here, the net revenue impact for the county unit. And I did want to mention that year 2 is when these units will see the biggest impact, because local income tax is based on the previous year's levy. So we're not going to see these bigger impacts until year 2 of the annexation. So that's why I'm going to focus more on the year 2 numbers. So in year 2, Monroe County, we're projecting that they will have a loss of revenue of about 2.7 million. So really this revenue is just being reallocated to primarily the city unit. And then the city's financial advisor came up with a revenue loss of about 1.85. So again, there's that difference there of 877,000. I think that's the biggest difference we found throughout the report. But as we go through, like Ellettsville is a pretty small community. We have a difference of, our loss that we were showing was about $58,000 more than what the financial advisor was showing. Some of these we were very close. Steinsville, very close to what was in the report. Again, I'll go to the next page. Again, don't want to bore you with all these numbers, but if you look at Monroe County Library, that was another instance where that's quite a bit more of a loss. We're showing in year 2 a loss of 273,000. The financial advisor was showing about 179,000. So that's a $94,000 difference in revenue. Moving on then to the third page. Richland Township was one that had a little bit more significant loss than the others. So we were looking at year 2. There was a $68,000 revenue reduction, whereas the financial advisor report was showing 17,000. So you can see kind of where we're going with that. The last page then, you can see Van Buren Township, we're showing a difference where the financial advisor was showing almost a $52,000 revenue loss. We're showing a $31,000. So it wasn't always the same, like we were showing more loss or, it was different just depending on the unit. Monroe Fire Protection District, I do want to point this one out because in the financial advisor's report, there was no indication of any sort of reallocation of local income tax. According to the report, there was zero impact related to local income tax. However, as I stated before, all units that receive local income tax will be impacted if Bloomington increases their overall levy because there's a redistribution. So there will certainly be an impact. Our calculation is about a $207,000 loss of local income tax. So that was another pretty significant change. But you can see a lot of areas where we were pretty close. If you look on the right-hand side of this page, especially the year 2 variance is what we focused on the most because that's the larger impact. There were a lot that were pretty close, pretty similar. Moving on to the next page. I like this because it is a summary of all of those that were on that page before. So if you are, for instance, with Van Buren Township, you can just look down on the schedule to see what the estimated revenue losses are for each of the 4 years. I highlighted again year number 2 because that's when the biggest loss will be born. So you can see Van Buren negative 31,408. That's the projected loss of revenue. And then you can see what the financial advisor projected. It was 51,600. So that's just an example, but this is pretty handy for, I don't know how many taxing units we have out in the audience other than Van Buren. I know we have the county up here. Are there any other taxing units represented today? I'm just curious. No? Okay. Well, this is, the taxing units will be able to access this information on the county website, and I think it will be very helpful to them to determine what the potential impact may be. Another part of our analysis, going to the next page, is what is the impact to the city of Bloomington? They are annexing, of course, so there is an impact to them as well. And, the impact is positive because they're generating additional revenue. So, some of the things that I had mentioned before, we had to restate. There were some inconsistencies in formulas within the financial advisor's analysis that we had to restate. So you have the first, 4 columns as Baker Tilly restated, and then you can see the financial advisor's information on the right. So again, there were some variances after we restated. You can see like the bottom line, this includes Bloomington City, Bloomington Transit, and Bloomington Stormwater. So the very bottom line is all of those units combined that relate to the city. So you can see, we have like 9 million year 1, 11.4 million year 2, year 3, 11.7 million, and year 4, 12.1. The financial advisor, we were pretty close on year 1, but it starts getting a little bit, more of a variance as you go, but still within the ballpark. I think year 4, the financial advisor had 12,675,000. We had 12,134,000. So again, I want to restate that, there were a lot of assumptions that were made that were pretty reasonable, but there were inconsistencies throughout the report. So moving on to the very last page.
Can I say, Paige?
Yes, go ahead.
Just on the schedule up there, you may look at it and say, geez, that's not what the Reedy Financial Group report says at all. And that may be true. And the reason why I say that is you can look in 3 different places and see 3 different results. There's one overall summary that doesn't match this page. This page is based off of the summary for each individual annexation area, which is a little bit different than the total you see earlier in the report. And then if you look at the detail within each individual area, you're not going to come up to the summary for each individual area. So it was kind of difficult to analyze because the numbers just aren't consistent throughout. So I just want to make that point that, you may look at that report and compare it to this and be like, geez, where's Baker Tilly coming up with these numbers from? That's why you may not always see that consistency.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I should have mentioned that there, and I said that a couple of times, that there were lots of inconsistencies in the report, and ours really focused on, since there was so much detail by annexation area, we basically took that detail and added up all those annexation areas and rolled it up to a number, but that number doesn't tie out to the summary pages within the analysis. So good point, Dean. I'm glad you mentioned that. So on the last page, this is something else you will see in the financial advisor's analysis. They call it a revenue over costs calculation. So what they're trying to show you is, with the estimated cost associated with this annexation, can the revenues that we project coming in, can those cover those estimated costs? That's what the schedule is attempting to do. So we have the first section there on the left is Baker Tilly restated. I do have it up on the screen. Yeah. Don't I? Yeah. Okay. So what, oh, I'm sorry, I don't. Dean's keeping me in line here, so I appreciate that. It's so hard for me to see over there. I thought I had it up on the screen. So anyway, so the section on the left is Baker Tilly restated. Again, just restating to keep consistency and using the correct formulas. On the right-hand side is Reedy Financial Group. So we selected the analysis in the report that was revenues over maximum cost, right? Worst case scenario. They also show a revenues over minimum cost, but let's use maximum cost, worst case scenario. So you can see in year 1, let's look at the Baker Tilly restated. It's similar, but we did restate a few things. So the total revenues are just pulled off the previous page. So if we are estimating about $9 million of revenue year 1, we have non-capital costs as specified in the fiscal plan of 8.5 million. And then there's some capital costs associated with this annexation of about 24.4 million. So the revenue over cost, the cost exceed the revenue, right? So they went on, and this is reasonable too. They went on to say, okay, with these capital costs, what if we issue debt over a 5-year period, a 10-year period, or a 20 period? Then can we bridge that gap, that deficit? And so let's look at the 5-year period. We're showing negatives there. So year 1, yes, that looks good. Year 2, you've got more costs over revenue. So really what, in order to fund those capital items with just the revenue that's coming in from the annexation, you probably have to look at least a 20-year debt service, which is down at the bottom. And yeah, you can probably fund that. I mean, we're showing a little bit of a deficit in year 4. If you look, it's a $327,000 deficit. So that what that's saying is that with my non-capital costs and my capital costs, I may have a little bit of a funding gap, but who knows what's going to happen by year 4. I think Dean mentioned that there's a lot of things that can happen. So it's pretty close. If you look at Reedy Financial Group's information, and we just drop down to the 20-year debt service, because that's probably going to be the one that is, the most reasonable here. It shows that you can cover these costs, but you see that there is a little bit of a difference. Like in year 1, they're showing that there's more revenue than costs of 1.2 million. We're showing it's about 560,000. But they do show that year 4, they can cover the non-capital and the capital costs, where we're showing that there's a negative. So those variances, again, are from where we went through and restated and made the formulas consistent throughout the report. So again, lots of information. If you're a taxpayer, that's probably not very exciting, but for a taxing unit, this is good information for those taxing units that will be impacted. So I'd be happy to take any questions about that portion of the information. Mhm.
I'm sorry. Yep, you need to be at the microphone. I'm really sorry, because they can't hear you on Zoom if you're not at the microphone. I'm sorry. Okay.
Hi, my name is Margaret Clements, and it seems to me that consistently throughout this report, you have made the city's estimates more conservative, and I'd like you to explain that.
So the question or the comment was, we've made the city's estimates more conservative. I think we were basically using the same assumptions that Reedy Financial Group was using, just making them consistent throughout the report. And the reason why we did that, first of all, I think it's important to note that we did not do a separate annexation fiscal plan. We were brought on to analyze a plan that was already put together. So we used the same assumptions when we restated, because they were reasonable. So like, remember when I said the property tax increase was 3.8% per year? That's very reasonable. The increases in local income tax of 3%, very reasonable. So we restated based on those reasonable assumptions that were used in the report.
Yeah, I just have a problem with that, because probably their assumptions are more in line with what their intentions than your corrections of their assumptions. And I just want to state that for the record. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any further questions? Hans, do we have any questions on Zoom?
Let's see. Yes, we have one, Jim Shelton.
Mr. Sheldon?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to unmute. It looks to me like you did not analyze the impact on the county's TIFs at all. The numbers that the $304,000 per year, which they've told us since then is wrong, is the number that still appears here. Did you look into that at all?
Yeah, so I can address that. We did not analyze the TIF because there was not enough detail in the fiscal plan to analyze how that number was arrived at. And we've footnoted that in our report. So again, I just want to make the clarification. We did not prepare an annexation fiscal plan. We analyzed a fiscal plan that was already prepared. So we did not have enough detail to analyze the calculations behind the stormwater revenues or the TIF revenues.
Yeah, well, we pointed that out to them on May 19th. They said there was a spreadsheet attached that explained things, and it turned out there was no such spreadsheet attached or even in existence. So, all right, I understand. Thank you.
much is discrepancies in the differences your figures and their figures? Are there standard practices or all of this? I mean, how is it that they, were able to be consistent on some things, but inconsistent on others, whereas you were totally consistent throughout?
Yeah, I mean, to answer, no, there's not standards. It is fair for you to make some reasonable assumptions. And I think we found that, many of the assumptions used are reasonable. But there's no doubt that there's some errors in calculations. And, I think it's, I can't speak to why that is. I can speak to it being a huge document, and I can imagine that it was very difficult to review. So I could see how some errors could slip through, but yeah, I mean, to your overall question, you have some latitude to make some reasonable assumptions.
Are there any more questions from the audience here? And have any more Zoom?
I think there might be one second.
Okay.
One more, Marty Hawk.
Please, Marty.
Michelle's working on our meeting.
Okay.
Okay, I was trying to use my touch screen and this is not a touch screen laptop. I wanted to convey my concern that was just shared by Mr. Shelton about this, the Richland Township TIF area, because there's a huge debt that has recently been put in place there. A great celebration of some of the recent accomplishments there. But that is very troublesome if we do not know that that revenue is going to be stabilized to come in to pay that debt. Because the debt was backed up by a general obligation, as you know. So I think it's very imperative that we find out where we are on that TIF before any further spending is done. And the same thing with our stormwater, because there's major projects being discussed with the stormwater, and yet we don't really see any real analysis of that. I'm not finding fault with Baker Tilly. I'm just saying I think those are things that we have to take a look at. Of course, my first thought is about the taxpayer, but if I put on my county council hat, I have to think about the fiscal implication.
Thank you, Marty. Councillor Hawk.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
We
Then-
have one more hand, Wolfgang.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm a resident of Van Buren Township, and I just wanted to know if anybody is ever going to share with us how Cook got out of being in the annexation area. There's rumors as far as money, et cetera, and I know you probably can't talk about it, but I'd sure like to see a little more transparency with that whole deal.
I believe that was the deal made with the city. So probably you should address your question to either the city council or the mayor.
Okay.
I believe it was covered years ago in the
Yes.
local paper also.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
sure. And if there's nothing else, Commissioner Githens?
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Penny Githens, Monroe County Commissioner. Before we proceed, I want to welcome Cheryl Munson, who is a member of the Monroe County Council. She is with us tonight. Thank you, Cheryl, for being here. We're going to next move on to talking about stages that residents can go through. And so I want to introduce Jeff Cockrell, who's one of the Monroe County attorneys. He's going to join us via Zoom. He'll be talking about the remonstration process and remonstrance waivers, what that means, hopefully. So Jeff, are you ready?
I am. I will just state off the bat that it says I cannot start my video because the host has stopped it. So you'll just have to listen to me and know that I tried. Oh, wait. Here we go. Yeah, and I'm going to be fairly brief. I want to make sure everybody understands that the remonstration process is a statutory process. It's found in Indiana code, and the auditor's office is the primary person in the county who is part of that remonstration process. She cannot, and she has to certify that she has not issued any of the petitions for remonstration prior to the ordinance's approval and by the city legislative body, and that the notice for that has been properly noticed. So people who want to remonstrate, we get the calls, but we're not allowed to issue that until after the city council has actually made a decision of where they're going to annex and they've properly noticed, or we would be in violation of state code, and we don't want to do that. The second thing I want to point out is that when the auditor's office reviews the remonstration petitions, they look at a couple of different things. One is to make sure that the person signed the petition actually owns property in one of the annexation areas. It's important. That's important. And two, there is a process that is interactive with the auditor's office and the city legislative bodies to determine whether a valid waiver of remonstration is in effect for that property. So that burden is placed upon the city, and the county auditor then certifies based upon the information given to us by the city legislative body. So that burden's not placed on the property owner, and I know of no penalty or sanction or anything like that should prohibit anyone who is uncertain or as to whether there is a valid remonstration or a waiver of remonstration on their property to go ahead and do that. The third thing is that the auditor's office is going to follow the current state code when it reviews whether a remonstration waiver is valid, and there are some subtleties to it, but essentially it's if it has been approved in the past 15 years or signed in the past 15 years. So I know we had a gentleman ask some questions about the remonstrations. So I just kind of wanted to make it clear that the auditor's office will certify the remonstrations petitions once it's timely and in the manner, in the form required by the Department of Local Government Finance. So that is what I have.
Would you talk just a little bit also about some of the timeline for this, Mr. Cockrell?
Well, my understanding is that the city council is going to review and potentially vote on this in September. The actual ordinance themselves, they have to do it not less than 30 days after the public hearing, which is scheduled for August 4th, but not more than 60 days following that public hearing. So that September window would comply with that statutory code. Once it is approved and the proper notice is given, the remonstration period is 90 days from when all that occurs. So I think we'll probably be looking at towards the middle to end of December for that remonstration period to run.
Thank you. Is there anybody here who has a question for Mr. Cockrell? If you so, please step up to the mic.
Please do introduce yourself to the microphone.
My name is Rita Barrow. I'm Van Buren Township trustee. And I think most of these individuals are really wanting to know when this does occur, and we're all assuming that it will be reviewed and it will go to where they are going to go ahead and annex. When we do the remonstrance, are they going to have to go to the county auditor to get these?
And I will answer that question as best I can. We're still meeting and asking questions to the state right now, so I don't know if I can answer it as completely as I will prior to middle of September. But my feeling is that we're going to ask if we can have the petitions on our website. I think the petitions, if you look at some of the ones from past, kind of indicate that one person will come in and get the remonstration petitions, and then they can have various people sign those as well. Does that kind of answer your question?
No, what I'm really looking for is, because these residents are very, very spread out, that they go to maybe their township trustee to receive these remonstrants, have individuals. There is, or there should be, a notary in each one of the townships that could notarize these if they need be. But I think that we need to cater to the residents, not the residents cater to everyone else.
And I will make sure we have that question asked to the state and the Department of Local Government Finance to see if that is appropriate. I mean, we don't want to do anything that would go against what their rules are, because that would then jeopardize the signing of those remonstrations. But I can get that answer and get it to you as soon as I get it.
All right, thank you.
I'm wondering, Jeff, if you could to explain what a waiver of remonstration is and why they might have one and why they might not, or why it might be expired. Can you explain that basic information?
Well, I think a waiver of remonstration is just the property owner at the time signs a document that indicates to the city that we will, that if you went ahead and asked and tried to annex this property, we won't file a remonstration against it. We typically, and I think the code typically sees these as kind of part of maybe the utility, a water line extension or sewer extensions or things like that, where there's infrastructure being put in place to service that home or business. And then at that time, in exchange for getting that extension, that's when the waiver of remonstrations are typically executed. Prior to, and I think it was 2018 or 19, there was no limitation on the length of those waivers of remonstration. State code has since said they can essentially last for 15 years. The current code also has some certain filing with the recorders within a certain time period, but that's only for waivers that would have been executed after 2019. So I'm not sure that that'll be very applicable here.
Would you actually define what a remonstrance is?
It is. I mean, I don't know the dictionary definition, but the definition is essentially someone who says, we do not want our property to be annexed, and we don't think that that is a benefit to our property.
So they're filing an official objection, basically.
Basically, yes.
Thank you.
And can you review the percentages for in the annexation statute on remonstrations?
Well, I know that the number of property owners, and again, property owners does not include are only for properties that have a tax bill, essentially. So it doesn't include tax exempt property owners, but property owners in that area. If 50, I think it's 51% sign that remonstration, have a valid, sign the remonstration and don't have a valid waiver against that, then it gets kicked into a category where it essentially there will be a judicial review of the annexation. If that number is over 65%, I believe, then it doesn't go through that, and it just, the annexation just doesn't move forward. The other, there are also assessed values. So I think it's over 80% of the assessed value in any particular annexation area. If you have remonstrations that represent ownership of over 80% of the assessed value, that would also make it so that the annexation did not move forward.
What about land area?
I don't think land area, I'd have to look at that, but I don't recall seeing anything regarding the land area. It's all assessed value or property ownership.
I'm sorry, I have a question. I'd like to know about the process, like, let's say between August 4th, the public hearing, and the time frame when city council votes on it. Is there a process through which the city council starts carving up these annexation areas and into smaller sections, et cetera? I mean, what is that process going to be like? Is it just going to be complete chaos and very algorithmically defined areas that they know they can annex? What's going to happen then between August 4th and September 15th?
And I would just say that as a county attorney, I really don't have any, and as a county employee, I don't really have any idea. I don't know what their process will be like. I don't really have a strong understanding of some of the requirements they have with continuity and those kind of things. That would be a great question to ask somebody associated with the city. I just don't know.
To that event, I'd like to make an announcement to everyone here that I'm accepting petitions at 1010 South Walnut at the Perry Township Trustee Meeting Room on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 3 to 6 p.m. Come in and sign a petition against annexation, and we'll present it to City Council. Thank you.
And I would just say that to that is not a petition to remonstrate, which cannot occur until after the city council has made a determination.
This may be true, and it is true, but we want to give city council an idea of how many people are opposed to annexation. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Cockrell? Is there any on Zoom?
It looks like Marty Hawk has got her hand raised.
The hand has since gone down.
Hi there. My name's Colby Wicker. I have a question for Mr. Cockrell. You gave the impression that there may be a scenario in which you get above 51% but below 65%, where a judge or a court would then make a decision on if the annexation would go forward. Can you speak to a situation where that would happen, where you have less than 65% but the annexation does not go through?
Well, I really, that would be a hard question for me to answer, because if you look at the state code, there are a variety of factors that the judge will look at, and I did not print that out or have that handy in front of me right now. Let me see if I can point you to a code section. It's in Indiana Code 3643, and so that would have all the criteria that the court would look at. Again, I'm here much more to tell you, hey, the auditor plays a role in this, and this is the auditor's role. This is when it starts, and those kind of issues. I really don't want to comment on any potential litigation that may occur between parties that aren't the county. It's just not our. It's not our position. We're providing information, and partly why I think my role in this is important is I want to make sure that people understand when these things begin, especially the remonstration begins, so that they aren't feeling like they missed their chance yet.
Sure. And I have one additional question for you, and I want to state for the record and just have this cleared by Mr. Cockrell. When we're talking about these percentages, we're talking about per annexation area, not as a whole of the county, correct? So say area 1A gets to 65%, but area 3 doesn't, then 1A would get out and 3 would not. Yes.
That is my understanding.
Wonderful.
My understanding is that the city divided these into almost 7 or however many there are now, different annexation areas, and each annexation area is essentially its own annexation.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Cockrell?
I think we have one. Marty Hawk put her hand back up. Marty, it looks like you're unmuted. Are you there?
Oh. Yes.
It looks like you're unmuted. Can you hear me? All right. Looks like we're good.
Yeah. Now is it working?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is working a lot different than when I'm in the middle of a county council meeting. That's not working the same. Any rate, I think that's a very important thing that we need to make it clear to the public at large, because many think that if one group is working really hard in one area to get petitions signed or waivers or whatever, that's going to help them in their area. But everybody has to recognize that each area is working on their own, even though we may be working as a group and as fellow citizens. If we're interested in our area, we have to make sure that we get those waivers signed, the petition signed in advance, so that the city council can understand our concerns, work together, and yet we know that each group has to stand on its own. And that's as I understand it when I read how this is supposed to work. Is that as you understand it, Mr. Cockrell?
Yes, that is how I understand it.
I have not heard anything further having to do with our fire districts, fire territory, and so forth about fire service. So I'm hoping that at some future meeting, our people representing the fire areas will come forward and share some of their concerns, because we're not hearing that so far.
Councillor Hawk, Dustin Dillard is on this call and he's going to be up next.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if I can figure out, I don't want to leave this meeting, but I may have to just to shut my thing off. Don't you laugh at me, Jeff.
No, I'm trying not to.
Sir, please.
My name is Harry Ferris, and my question has to deal with the remonstrance when it comes to distributing. You said the auditor's office would conduct that. Now, will they be mailed to each resident? Will they, as Rita suggested, go to the trustees in each township for people to go in and sign? The reason I ask this is I've been conducting door-to-door petition collection. And there's a lot of shut-ins that won't be able to get to a central location to fill out a form. And did a little research on my own on the state code, and the way I read the state code, and I'm not an attorney, but I could pick up forms for people and take it to them. So I think we need some clarification on that, because the way everything I understand, the mayor intends to go through to that extent to this process of remonstrance, and we need to start planning for that approach to defend ourselves.
Well, and I think maybe to answer your question, I think that the process is that the auditor issues the remonstration petitions, and it is a document that can have many different signatures. So I think the intention is that whoever wants to collect signatures would come in and get a petition from the auditor's office and then go around and collect signatures and bring them back. There's no anticipation of any mailings to individual homes or anything like that. So I think it sounds like what you're doing for your petitions right now will be a similar thought as to how remonstrations could be collected if they're sought.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
All right. And that, thank you again, Mr. Cockrell. And that brings us to, and if you could stand by to see if there are questions at the end of the meeting, that would be great. Now we'll turn to Dustin Dillard, who's the chief of the Monroe County Fire Protection District. And a reminder, as they're pulling him into the meeting, that if you are on Zoom and you have questions, you can pose them via chat to the panelists, and they will be read into the record and they will be addressed. So get your questions typed in, and we'll also take them via audio as we've done. Chief Dillard.
Hey, thank you all. So I'm Dustin Dillard, Fire Chief at Monroe Fire Protection District, and I'm here to speak on how annexation affects the Fire Protection District. The jurisdictional boundaries are not affected by this annexation proposal. For several years, back into the 80s, there were fire districts throughout Indiana that kept their geographical jurisdiction when annexations occurred. That legislation was kind of a gray area. There was questions about who it applied to and who it didn't. In 2019, all of that was cleaned up, and those districts and several more actually became what I would say protected from annexation. When I say protected from annexation, it does not stop the city from annexing into a fire district, but it allows the fire district to continue to function as the fire service and emergency provider, because we all know that fire stations, fire trucks, firefighters are expensive things, and you can't just move a fire station easily. Police service, patrol cars may change areas. Fire station wise, we build multi-million-dollar fire stations in areas that they should last 50 to 100 years. And it doesn't make sense for a jurisdictional boundary to just up and change and those resources be expected to just move down the road. So that's the reason that the fire district will remain the fire protection service for the areas that are being annexed. But as mentioned earlier, this still impacts us financially. Even though the fire district remains the same footprint, we still have the same responsibilities. And just because the city annexes, they increase their levy, the way the lit income is distributed, we will be negatively impacted. And that's pretty much where the fire district stands at this point. We will retain fire protection. We'll still operate the same firehouses with the same firefighters to these communities, but we will lose some revenue.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add, Chief Dillard?
That's all I had.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Great, thank you so much. So for those of you who are in a fire protection district, even if you were to be annexed by the city of Bloomington, you would not have city fire protection. You would remain in the Monroe County Fire Protection District. So are there any questions for Chief Dillard from anyone here or via Zoom?
We have no questions here.
Okay, we have someone coming to the microphone here in the room.
This is Harry Paris again. Chief, I live in Richland Township, and I believe our fire service is with the, under contract with the, but I'm in the county, and with the city of Ellettsville. So if we were to be annexed by the city of Bloomington, do you have any idea, would we be served by the continuation of that contract, or would we have to, I would be affected in the sense that the West 3rd Street Fire Station for the city of Bloomington that has to go over the interstate at rush hour and get caught in traffic would be servicing me west of the interstate. I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can address that or have any knowledge of that, but since you were up, I thought you might have some for that.
I can definitely help out a little bit with that. So Richland Township and Bean Blossom Township, along with Salt and Polk Township, are not in the fire protection district. Now, Polk and Salt Creek Township do contract with the district, but they're not officially within it. So Richland Township and Bean Blossom, up in your direction, any area annexed the city of Bloomington would assume fire protection. So what that essentially means in Richland Township, if you're outside of the town of Ellettsville, Richland Township's fire responsibilities would reduce, and they would see a reduction in the levy that they can distribute to the township to pay for fire protection. So people that would really be negatively impacted by that would be those who remain in Richland Township, but were not annexed by the city of Bloomington, because there's going to be less contractual money available to continue to provide services. So those who are annexed in Richland Township would begin receiving services from the city of Bloomington, and those who remained would have a much smaller amount of money to contract services with whomever they determine to contract with.
We have a question from the Zoom chat. This is from Alice, and it is, Richland Bean Blossom Fire Services have unique capabilities built to serve businesses on the west side, and will they remain and grow with those high-tech businesses as they grow?
Yeah, so again, in Richland Bean Blossom Township, you would want to direct your question to Mike Kornman, the fire chief at the Ellettsville Fire Department. He provides services to Richland Township and some automatic aid in Bean Blossom. I don't have the knowledge to answer that question as far as what services would remain.
Great, thank you for that question. Anyone else have questions either via Zoom or here in the room on the fire district, or any general questions? Anything that you've thought of since our great folks at Baker Tilly and Mr. Cockrell have already presented. Anything else that has bubbled to the surface that you'd like to ask about, and that could be here in the room or via Zoom?
We have one on Zoom, Don Krieg.
Yes, Chief Dillard, I was curious on the estimated revenue loss. You anticipated a revenue loss. Do you have an idea of the amount?
The highest number at this point comes from this Baker Tilly report, and it's approximately $142,000.
Does that translate into personnel loss or?
Yeah, I mean, so no, I don't think we would see personnel loss. However, it would definitely inhibit our progress in transferring from full-time or part-time firefighters to full-time firefighters. We've been kind of working to phase in full-time equivalents into career positions, and $142,000 is essentially 2 full-time positions. So that's something that would definitely hinder the process or progress that we're making.
Thank you.
This is Paige Sandstone with Baker Tilly. I just wanted to make a correction there. Actually, the highest impact that we're showing is a reduction of revenue of about 501,370. And the chief picked up that number of 141,000. That was the variance of what we had between, our Baker Tilly restated and the Reedy Financial Group. So it is a higher impact. It's over $500,000.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying that.
And I think that's a great example of how annexation can impact people in the county who are not even targeted for annexation right now, because those of us who have the Monroe County Fire Protection District serving us, that's going to be an impact that's going to hurt others in the community, even if they're not targeted for annexation right now. So I think that's a really good example. And that's why this is so important to understand and to be active on. While we're waiting for any last questions, I want to invite somebody from the group that's here with petitions. I want to note that there is an informal, not the remonstrance, but an informal effort to gather petition signatures. And I want to invite one of you to come up and speak to offer information on where they can where they can send an email or a call to sign a petition. But this is a non-legal petition, but it is a petition that is going to be presented to the city council in advance of their August 4th meeting. And the August 4th meeting is the city council's, and it begins at 3 p.m. It is the city council's public hearing on annexation, and anybody can attend. It will be available via Zoom, or you can go in person. I recommend Zoom at this point. So if somebody would like to come up and offer information on how to contact the group via email or phone, I think that would be helpful. But I will also note that they have the petitions here today. So if any of you are interested in signing, they could accommodate you. And we've got 3 people coming up, so that's great. Thank you.
Rita Barrow, Van Buren Township trustee. Our office is open, and you have to understand that we collectively have everyone's area and petition that you can sign. So you could go to any one of us and we would be able to provide that for you. I want to say this, we operate from 8:30 to 4 daily. We usually close for lunch. Somebody usually tries to stick around, but if you want to come in and you want to do this, we would invite you in. Please don't hesitate, because what's happening right now is, let's just put it this way. Let's do an example. Area 1A, there are maybe 2 or 3 people that are walking these petitions around. Have you seen how large 1A is? And you do this for every area that they have selected. People can't do this. So we are suggesting to you, if you live in a subdivision and you're willing to walk your road or your street, please come in and do this. We will give these to you, just asking you to bring it back so we can present them to the city council.
And to Rita's point, County Residents Against Annexation is a citizen-run organization. And so the only way that we can operate is if we come together as a community. And I wholeheartedly believe that we can stop this, but only if we come together. The 3 of us standing here can't do it together. The people who we have walking streets right now, they're not going to be able to do it by themselves. So we as a community have to come together to fight this if we really, really want to end it. And I think that it is possible.
I'd like to just clarify, Rita Barrow is Van Buren Township trustee, and the Van Buren Township trustee's office is open during the day, during the normal business hours from 8:30 to 4:30. It's closed for lunch till 4, and it's closed for lunch. And that's on Kirby Road across from the Van Buren Township Fire Department, okay, over by the airport. And I'm Margaret Clements, and I have the petitions at 1010 South Walnut, which is the Perry Township Trustees Meeting Room. And I'm there 3 to 6 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My phone number is out there. It's 812-361-4424. I'm looking to set up in people's driveways to collect petitions. In every neighborhood I've been, I've had like a 98% opposition rate to annexation. And there are some people with very serious tax impacts that would force elderly people out of their homes. And we just feel that the vision between those in the city and us in the county has diverged. And we need to make ourselves understood that we oppose annexation, and we have to let city council know that and get to the 65%, especially with the remonstration waivers or remonstration petitions, but up until they vote, on September 14th. I want to be collecting petitions from everybody. So come out, help us, call us, let us set up in your driveway. Let's get signatures. Thank you.
You have yard signs and things too, right?
Those, we've put them all out.
100 of them, yeah.
100 and
Past tense, okay.
50
Right.
of them, 150 of them.
Also, I just to end this with an invitation, if you have questions, comments, concerns, you'd like to get involved in our process, you can call Margaret at her phone number, or you can send us an email at stopbloomingtonannexation@gmail.com. That's stopbloomingtonannexation@gmail.com, and we would be happy to connect you with the people, get you petitions to go around, or if you're shut in, you're not able to get out, we'll get somebody to come to you and make sure that you can sign a petition. So thank you all. Yeah.
And I'm going to leave you on this note. You can call the office 812-825-4490. If you can't come in, we will bring it to you. And number two, I'm not opposed. I'm not for, but I am for my residents, and that's who I'm working for. So if you guys want to come in, get your petitions and get this started, not only do these petitions show the city council what we don't want, what it is going to do is give us paper that we can go back and make sure that if you do want to remonstrate, that you do have that form completed. So it's a backup for us. So make sure, whatever you do, to come in and let us know what you want to do. Thank you.
Mr. Kelson?
Yeah, I have a couple more from the Zoom chat. And the first is from Marty Hawk. And she asks, will the fire district cover the airport?
And I think I can answer that for Dustin. Yes, the airport is within the fire protection district, and so they will continue covering that. I also just would want to note, to make sure everybody watching is clear, the county itself is neutral in this annexation. I think we, appreciate, and I don't want to in any way chill speech, that either pro or against the annexation, but I certainly want to make sure that it's clear that this is what was presented is for informational purposes. And, if people in the public make public comment, that's fine and well, but just wanted to make sure that clarification occurred.
And I have one more. This is from Alice again. The county and its leaders over many decades have done a great job of growing the county and yet keeping the balance many like, and much has been invested. How is the county's vast investment recouped from the city if annexation is approved?
Mr. Cockrell, would you like to handle that one?
I guess I think the best way to answer that one is to say every area within the city limits is also within the county limits. So it's not a one or the other in all cases. I think when we look at, and one of the reasons when we talked about early on, we wanted to get a second review of what they did, is that there are parts of the county, such as the courts and the property tax collections and the jail, that are a burden no matter for the same burden for whether I live within the city or I live outside the city. So the county still has that burden. And so the shift in the revenue that was shown today in the report, I mean, that's an area that our fiscal body is concerned with because of not all the burdens are transferred when annexations occurred. So, you know, to talk about that question makes me think that, you know, we got to remember that every inch of the city is still within the county. So, you know, the investment being recouped, it's kind of a tough question. And honestly, I think a lot of the issues with that, and maybe I'm getting a little farther off, is dealt with how the legislature has distributed the income tax between the entities. I hope that someone answers it without me going too much on a soapbox.
No, I think you're spot on, and I think that's a great point. No matter what, every city resident is a county resident. Every resident of Ellisville is a county resident. Everyone in Monroe County is a county resident. And there are some things that we provide only for people outside the city. There's some services that only get provided to people outside of the city or outside of the town of Ellisville. Things like snow plowing and road crews and things like that for patching and paving. But there are things that the county does that serves every single person in the county. And you could think about this in terms of the smallest department that I can think of, which would be weights and measures, which goes out to make sure a gallon of gas is a gallon of gas everywhere in the county. But also really important things that we provide across the county, like health, the health department, which serves the entire county. And we know, as we're all wearing masks in this room, how important that is. But clearly the criminal justice system is the largest portion of our expenditure, and it serves every county resident. And that goes everywhere from the courts, the prosecutor, public defender, community corrections, probation, that whole, the sheriff's department, the jail, all of that is something that's provided to every county resident. And if we have in the county a loss of revenue because of annexation, and this goes for every township and every taxing unit, the library, the schools, whoever it might be, every loss of revenue means that there's a service that's going to be reorganized. There may be a cut in something, or there may be a new fee, because somehow we have to continue the excellent service that Monroe County's provided to every resident of the county. And that's going to be a struggle for our county council, depending on what amount of annexation occurs. And that's something they will have to deal with. Any last minute questions? I do want to thank again everyone for being here, and I want to thank our hosts, the Bloomington Township Fire Department. Dustin Dillard was a great help, and we appreciate everyone being here today. Paige and Dean from Baker Tilly, and Dustin Dillard, and of course our legal department representative, Jeff Cockrell. And again, a reminder that there are 2 upcoming meetings. If you joined us late, the next one is Sunday, August 1st at 2 p.m. at the Monroe County Fairgrounds. Note that you should enter at gate 3, and that is an in-person meeting only. And Monday, August 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Kennedy Drive Fire Station. That's 3953 South Kennedy Drive. That's an in-person or Zoom participation, just like we did today. I want to thank again our technical services department for doing such a great job. And I want to note that in addition to the elected officials here, our trustee, Rita Barrow, and Counselor Cheryl Munson, who are in the room, there are other elected officials who are on Zoom that we can't see, who have been watching as well. And I appreciate their attendance too. So anything else for the good of the order?
No, I think this has been really, really productive.
Very
Okay.
helpful.
Yes, thank you for asking that. Yes, the next 2 meetings are going to be very similar to this one. in terms of the content, but if there are new questions, people can come on to Zoom. Maybe they've seen this on CATS and they want to come later. They can get onto Zoom and submit a question or attend a meeting. And it looks like we do have one more question here or comment.
I'm Jill Snyder and I'm in 1C. I live in 1C. It's not a question. I just want everyone to, if you're not familiar with the area, they are looking at Cedar Chase. It's a housing addition and then 5 other properties. That's all they're looking at. 2 of them I own. Cedar Chase is a habitat. They're homes for habitat. They're wanting to raise these taxes on these people that are true blue working class. So I just want people to know, if you didn't know, that Cedar Chase is a habitat addition.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think it's important to note that for a lot of folks in the community who are on a fixed income, a tax increase can be life-changing of that magnitude. So, and again, we encourage people to use the calculator that's on co.monroe.in.us to check your property if you're targeted for annexation. But thank you for raising that point. Mr. Kelson.
I would like to make a correction. We had a communication failure and the name Alice is Elisa. For the record, I apologize.
We are going to get you some reading glasses next. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, thank you so much for your for your attention and for being here today. We so appreciate you. And we will see many of you on Sunday. Thanks again. Thank you.